Oh, did you pick one? I'll give it a shot. Yeah, just because I read it, like I know, like I have an idea of what it's about, so I'll do it. Because I think it needs, it's translating from the Hebrew, and so I may modify it a little bit because I think the translation makes some errors. Yeah, I have to find out about that. Oh, good. You'll fill me up.
Well, I gave her the option. She really wanted to leave Jewish and I was like, you know.
I thought she was doing it on Friday night. Double check with them. I mean, that I believe you. It's just that's so different.
Yeah. The Nazi cottage, could be show them, Elaine, like
Nice.
do them.
We'll see if this works. Shabbat Shalom, nice to see you in person too. I guess this does work. Yay, because that way I feel like it's okay if I stand here. Be a little closer. Well, I mean, you can always move back if you're like, I don't trust him. That's why the policy here is changing, as you probably saw the email, and that's also true for people who are Zooming right now or streaming, which is that starting not next weekend, but starting right after next weekend, starting the Monday a week, will be masks will be optional for those people, but it's still, you may well see me still wearing a mask. So don't think you're the only one who's going to be wearing a mask if you like mask, if you prefer to mask. But the reopening committee did decide to make it optional while we're at a low, we're in the green zone. When we go into yellow and red, God forbid, but should it happen, then the mask will go back on. So that is where we're at. I know it's a sort of a changer. And also we're back in person. For those who are streaming, we'll continue streaming on Friday night, but obviously it's obviously we're back in the sanctuary. And I'm going to consider maybe once a month having a home Shabbat. The idea like we're all Zooming around our table, because I like the experience of it over the pandemic. And so I thought maybe we'll still have it occasionally where instead of meeting in the sanctuary, we stay at home. But that would, if we do that, it'd be like once a month or once every 2 months. But for right now, for consistency's sake, we're in the sanctuary for Friday night and we're wearing masks for this weekend, next weekend. Mark, Shabbat Shalom. Here we go. Let's do page 13. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni l'shalom Malachei Hashalom Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzechem l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech, malachei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Page 14, let's sing the first and last verses of Yedid Nefesh. And let us remember that we're automatically connected to God, like all the wild animals are, unburdened in the wilderness. So let us be like the mountain goat or the deer or any animal that's just already immediately in touch with the present moment and walks with God by walking with nature. Yedid Nefesh Av Harachaman Mishoch Avdach Eretzonach Yarutz Avdach Kemo Aya Yishtachave Emul Hadarach Yerav lo yediduta mi nofetzuf v'chol ta'am higalena ufros chaviv alayet sukat shelamach ta'ir eretz mikvodach Nagila v'nismecha bach Maher ahu kiva moed v'chaneni ki me'olam yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 da. And like the wild animal, we are fleet of foot and unburdened. But here we're on the next page, L'chun Ranana, Psalm 95, and we're entering the zone of Shabbat. We're crossing the barrier from the public space to the private space of God, or from the week into the time of Shabbat. L'chun Ranana, L'Adonai. Naria litzor yishenu nikadma fanav betoda bizmiror naria lo. As we head down to the page, asking God to kind of lead our merry band here, collected in the sanctuary and through the streaming room. And as we're asking God to be the shepherd and we becoming a flock of God, we reach the bottom of the page where we realize that we disperse and we chase our shepherd away when we complain, instead of receiving Shabbat as blessing. Bottom 3 lines. Arba'im shana akut bedor ba'omar am tohe levavim Vehem lo yadu derachan asher nishbati v'api im yavon el menuchati. Page 16. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz shiru l'Adonai baruch shemo basru miyom liyom yeshuato sapru v'goyim kevodo bechol ha'amim niflotav ki gadol Adonai umhulal me'od norahu al kol Elohim ki kol Elohim Elohim Adonai Shalai Masam. Yismechu hashamayim, hashamayim, yismechu hashamayim, hashamayim, yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yiram hayam, yiram hayam, yiram hayam, umelo, yiram hayam, yiram hayam, yiram hayam, umelo. Lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz, yishpot hevel b'tzedek, v'amim be'emunato. So we turn to page 17. I'm going to share the poem for the night. It is a modern Israeli poem translated into English. And I put it here because we just learned, as we always do on Friday night, we really learned the lesson of trying to make ourselves a promise not to complain for the next 25 hours or 26 hours. And it's a promise that we always usually I imagine, break before Havdalah at some point. But it doesn't mean it's a bad practice to every week try to make that promise yet again. Can we receive everything that happens the next 25 hours, 26 hours as a world that was made for us? It's just, we won the lottery by getting to live in this world. Can we experience it that way? Israelis, like the rest of us, are prone to complain. So this seems to me a poem about the temptation to complain. It's called Photograph, and it's by the Israeli poet Asher Reich. From the dark room, remember photograph, from the dark room of my brain, a sound emerges. Someone in there is developing a negative of my very hidden thoughts. So from the dark room of my brain, I hear a sound. Someone's in there developing a negative of one of my innermost hidden thoughts. The acid trickles out over the paper and through a keyhole. In the wet photograph, I can see a man thinking a poem about his bitter life. He looks exactly like me, meets me as a muse on a dark street, invites himself into my home, settles in my darkness. I awake to leave him all my negative assets, binding myself to his fate. Yet before I have time to escape, someone pounds on the front door. And that's the end. I like the image. Dark room in there, someone developing the negatives of my thoughts. And I turn over the negatives to this little person, and therefore bind myself to his fate, unfortunately. We continue with Psalm 97, taking us through the rest of the Kabbalat Shabbat Psalms. Smoke and clouds surround the justice and goodness of creation, of God's throne. Orzaru ala tzadik, uyishrei lev simcha, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, vodu lezecher kodsho. Psalm 98. God has worked wonders in my life this week. Let me find a way to make music and join in with the sea and God's creatures and the rivers, writing a song of the wonders God has worked for me through this week. Lifnei Adonai kiva, kiva lishbot haaretz, yishbot tevel b'tzedek, v'amim b'meisharim. Psalm 99, page 19. The cloud that shields God's presence from my immediate perception is the same cloud that my ancestors faced and found God's presence within. Let me put my intellect aside, my skepticism, my armor, and feel my way to the God in the cloud. Rumimu Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. And page 20, Psalm 29. Even when the cloud spits forth lightning and thunder, God's voice is found in those as well as it was at Mount Sinai. And even when life is scary and challenging, I remember that God even sat enthroned at the flood, bringing peace upon his people or her people. Avu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, avu l'Adonai kavod va'od. Adonai lamabul yashav, vayeshev Adonai melech le'olam. Adonai oz amo yitein, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. And lately we've been introducing Ana Machoach, which we don't normally do. So let's give it a try, even if it's a challenging melody for me. Ana Bechoach, Gedulat yemincha tatir tzurura. Kaberina amcha sagvehenu taharenu nora. Nagibor dorshe chudcha Givavat shomrim barchem tehorim rachamim tzidkatcha tamid gomlim chasin kadosh berov tuvcha nahel adatecha yachid geheli amcha panei zochre kedushatecha shavatenu kabel Ushma tzakatenu yodea talumot ana bechoach gedulat yemincha tatir tzurura Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. It takes us to Lechadodi. We're on page 21. Lechadodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad. Ki shmihanu el hamyuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad. L'shemo tiferet v'litila l'chadodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela likrat Shabbat lechuven elcha ki hi mekor habracha merosh mikedem nesucha sof ma'aseh b'machshava techila Lechadodi likrat kala Shabbat nekabela Mikdash melech melucha Kumitzei mitoch hafecha Rav lach shevet be'emek habacha Vehu yachamol alaychem la Lechadodi likrat kala Penei Shabbat nekabela hitnari me'afar kumi livshi bigdei tifarte chami aya ben Yishai beit halachmi korva el nafshi ge'ala lechadodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela Middle 22, Yamin usmo'ot tifrotzi, v'et Adonai ta'aritzi, al yarish ben partzi, v'nismecha v'nagila, lechadodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela, boi v'shalom aterepala, Gam b'simcha u'v'tzola tochem unhe am segula boi chala lechadodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. We may be seated as we continue on page 23. Shabbat Shalom. Mizmor shir, shir lihom haShabbat. Mizmor shir, shir lihom haShabbat. Tov lehodot l'Adonai u'lezamer l'shimcha ha'elyon lehagid ba'boker chastecha V'emunatcha b'leilot Mizmor shir, shir li'om haShabbat. Mizmor shir, shir li'om haShabbat. Continue silently to the bottom of the page. We're 4 lines from the bottom of the page. And for Tzaddik HaTamar, I'm going to invite you to please sing along. And if for any reason, the Hebrew is difficult, and when we get a new book, it'll have transliteration, but right now this one does not. But if you don't know the Hebrew, I'm going to invite you to just sing like la, 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 la. And I used to remember to do this years ago in my rabbinate. I used to do it at most Friday night services and Saturday, but I've gotten out of practice, and Rabbi Orr reminded me to make it my practice again. So if you don't know Tzaddik HaTamar, you can go ya da 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 da. So it's important to, if you can, join in with the prayer, no matter what. Such a beautiful piece. I know I mention all the time, but when one is planted in firm values, one grows strong in all kinds of resilient ways. And then when one gets older, one still has new creativity and new growth, even when one is already grown tall with age and wisdom. Tzaddik HaTamar yifrach ge'erez bavanon Yiske shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvon b'seva dishenim verananim Yehu lehagi ki ashar Adonai tzuri tzuri velo avlatabo. We turn to page 24 for Psalm 93. Who will read responsively for us today? Who wants to lead Psalm 93? I'm looking around. Please, Maureen. You set the earth on a sure foundation. You created a world that stands firm. Rise and rage. The waters may pound and pulsate. The floods may swirl and storm. Your decrees, Adonai, never fail. Holiness befits your house for eternity. Edotecha nemnu me'od, leveitcha nava kodesh Adonai, ba'orech yamim. Warner's Kaddish is on middle 24. Beth Israel congregation remembers, among others, and I'm warning you, it's a long list, so you might want to get comfy. We remember Abba Baruch Aminoff, Irving Aronson, Terry Arnkoff, Barbara Berliner, Eileen Susan Berman, Leo Binder, Marion Buckman, Chaya Karmi, Ada Chaikin, Matthew David Coleman, Abe Duskovsky, Gertrude Doberson, Joseph Elias, Rhoda Martha Elwood, Sydney Fine, Rose Feinerman, M. Nathaniel Fink, Lila Friedman, Bert Frey, Riva Gankin, Leonard Ginsberg, Bernard Ginsberg, Harvey Gordinker, Ida Grossman, Rina Jean Grossman, Rena Jean Grossman, Eugene Hoffer, David Karp, Alvin Kushner, Eli Ladin, Beatrice Laufer, Yetta Lerner, Hetty Luxon, Jack Markovitz, Daniel Niss, Elizabeth Penchasoff, Walter Reiner, Samuel Rice, Ami Rosenthal, Lillian Rothberg, Fred Safran, Sarah Schreiber, Robert Shapiro, Wendy Schifrin, Keith Siegel, Sydney Sauce, Francis Unger, Ruth Vicker, Sydney Warchowski, Bert Westheimer, Marcella Vogel, and Phyllis Zeller, as we continue to say Kaddish for Elaine Stoller, Natalie Scher, Suzanne Feingold Schultz, Judith Cashton, Lorraine Sherman, Michael Adams, Leona Leon, Phyllis Werble, Vanchin Lessing, Carol Feinerman, David Fallman, Bruce Thal, Carol Amster, Gary Joseph Ullman, and Paul Ernest Phillips, among the others for whom we say the Kaddish tonight. For those reciting, please rise, middle of page 24. Yitgadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah. Amen. V'yalma divra pirute v'yamlich malchute. V'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'gala uvizman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ulamei almaya. Yibarach v'yishabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudesha brichu. Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Aseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. We all rise. May their memories continue to bring blessings to this world. We're on page 28 for the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed. We may be seated. Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach. We continue silently. Umavir yom, umevi laila, mavdil ben yom, uvein laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamidim lo chalenu leolam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai, hama'arihi v'aravim. On page 29, we prepare for the Shema by remembering that we feel God's love when we understand how to live our lives with wisdom in all of the different dimensions that applies to. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'mishpatim otanu limadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu v'shachveinu v'kumeinu nasiach v'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu v'yorech yameinu v'yorech yameinu uvahem nege yomam v'layla v'yavatcha tasimenu l'olamim baruch ata Adonai ohev amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavcha, u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol me'odecha, v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele. Asher Anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivdecha b'veitecha uv'lechlecha v'aderech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha uv'shartam li'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha Uchtav al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. Continue 30 and 31 silently. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Emet v'v'nakom. Umalchuto b'ratzon kiblu aleihem Moshe Miriam u'bnei Yisrael l'chanusha b'simcha haraba v'yamru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh norati lo tohosef ele malchutecha ra'u v'necha bokei yam lifnei Moshe Ze'eli anu v'yamaru Adonai himloch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar kifada Adonai Yaakov kol gasak mimenu baruch ata Adonai ga'al Yisrael. Page 33, let's wish for Sukkot Shalom over ourselves, over anyone who's suffering for any of the aspects of this list, from hunger, from depression, from anxiety, from worry, from disease, or from coronavirus, and all of those in Ukraine who fear for their lives. Let's read together in English. Help us, Adonai, to lie down in peace and awaken us again, our sovereign, to life. Spread over us your shelter of peace. Guide us with your good counsel. Save us because of your mercy. Shield us from enemies and pestilence, from starvation, sword, and sorrow. Remove the evil forces that surround us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings, O God, who watches over us and delivers us, our gracious and merciful ruler. Guard our coming and our going. Grant us life and peace now and always. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Praised are you, Adonai, spreads the shelter of peace over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Page 34. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat L'dorotam berit olam beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash. We're in the middle of page 34. We're ready for the silent Amidah, and I've got a teaching, or a very brief teaching, and a thought for you tonight. Make sure you know that when you head into your silent Amidah, that when it comes to page 36, you'll be doing the insert for Rosh Chodesh, because tonight we're beginning Rosh Chodesh, which will continue through tomorrow. And so the teaching relates to that particular entry. As many of you, we don't always have Shabbat Chodesh. This is Shabbat Chodesh. We're heading into it. It is the last of the 4 special Shabbats before Pesach, each of which brings in a different theme to get us ready and preparing for the big holiday that is so soon upon us. Tomorrow we'll be reading Exodus chapter 12, which includes the origins of the Seder. Reminds us of the essential mitzvot of the Seder, meaning bitter herb and matzah, and the gathering of the meal and the angel of death. But not always does the new month actually intersect with Shabbat HaChodesh, which announces the new month. So we would have Shabbat Chodesh, even if the new month new month of Nisan was starting on Tuesday. But for this Shabbat HaChodesh, it really starts right now as it's getting dark, and we've already entered the month a little early by praying the Kabbalat Shabbat service in Mariv. So we're entering the month of Nisan right now. It means we'll have 3 Torah scrolls tomorrow. One for the special Shabbat, the Exodus chapter 12, one for Rosh Chodesh, and one for the reading of Tazria. So one of the things that we'll find in the Torah reading tomorrow is that this month is the first of the months for you. And we'll find it in the Haftarah from Ezekiel as well. Haftarah will remind us that the first of the month, we are now entering, the first month of the year is Nisan. So that means we are actually on New Year's Eve right now. And as many of you already know, but sometimes it's easy to forget, Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the 7th month. So we have 4 New Years in Judaism. Rosh Hashanah is the New Year's for some purposes, but it actually occurs on the first day of the 7th month. So right now we're actually entering the 1st month. So this is the real New Year's. Why are we at one of the 4 New Years in Judaism right at this moment? And Exodus chapter 12 explains it, which is you shall start counting the calendar from this moment, because there is no time for someone who's a slave. When time is not your own, then the calendar that you're given by your oppressor is their calendar. And it doesn't really apply to you because you're not in control of your own time. And so I'm not one of those medievalists like who counted back to the beginning of creation and got 5783 or whatever Hebrew. Don't ever ask me what the Hebrew year is. I'm morally opposed to it. I don't hold by the medieval rabbi who decided to count backwards through Genesis. I hold with what the Torah is saying, which is how many years Genesis took up doesn't matter, because time for you began with the Exodus. It began with the Seder. It began with leaving Egypt. So my question for you tonight, for your Amidah, if you're looking for a kavanah, is to take this out of its Jewish context for a second and take it in its wisdom. When did time start for you? So it might be in your mind. Maybe it was when you were born because you were born free. Maybe it was when you were born because maybe time begins for us. Because the teaching in Judaism here is time begins when you're truly free on the inside. When you're truly free to direct your own life. And everything that comes with it, not just the ability to have will, but the ability in a way to have wisdom, the ability to have control, and the ability to serve God. Because that's a big one for the rabbis. Without freedom, you serve another master. And that's why idolatry is part of the prohibition is in the 10 Commandments. When did you first really get freed to serve God? And it could be when you were born. It could be the first time you knew you were really loved. And for some people, that's not when they were born. Maybe it's when the first time you knew you were really loved, and that set you free to be able to serve. Maybe it was actually something you learned. Maybe it came from a teacher. Maybe you had a mentor or a teacher that taught you something that made something click inside you. Can you think about that for a moment? So anything was in college, was in high school, was in elementary school, was it from a grandparent? Did you ever learn something, cause something to click inside you? And you saw the world differently or could operate in the world differently after that. For those, and not everyone is, for those who have had children, did something start with that? Or was it the opposite? So I served them, not God. Or the experience of being a grandparent, where you don't have the bondage of caretaking, but you have, some do, but you have the freedom to explore love in a different way. Was it a friendship that changed your life, or a therapist? So maybe during the Amidah, think a little bit about when did time start for me? Because here we are at the beginning of the remembering when time started for us. Please rise, middle of 34. Yidgada v'yidgada shemei rabba, v'yama divra kidurte v'yamlich malchute, B'chayechon uvyom echon uvchaye dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agalav izman kariv ve'imeru amen. Yeheshmera b'mevarach li'alam ulam me'amaya. Yiparach v'ishtabach v'yipar v'yitromam v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmedu kudesham le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiram v'yama v'yimeru. 35b to 38 with the insertion for Rosh Chodesh or your own personal reflections and introspection. For those who are davening, please continue as the rest of us are on page 47. And stand at the microphone.
Hayachulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chotzevam v'yachol Elohim bayom hashvi'i melachto asher asa v'yishbot bayom hashvi'i mikol melachto asher asa v'yivarech Elohim et yom hashvi'i vayikadesh oto ki vo shavat mikol melachto asher bara Elohim la'asot. Baruch
atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon konei shamayim va'aretz.
Magen avot bidvaro.
Mechaye metim b'ma'amaro. Ha'el hakadosh she'en kamohu. Hameniach le'amo. Yom Shabbat kodsho. Kivam ratza lehaniach lahem. Kivam ratza lehaniach lahem. Lefanav na'avod b'yirav pachad. V'nodeh lishmo b'chol yom tamid. Me'on habrachot. El haodaot adon hashalom. Mekadesh hashabat umvarech shevi. Umeniach bigdusha. Yamdu shnei oneg. Zecher l'maaseh. The Maaseh Bereshit. Let's read together on 48. Our God and God of our ancestors, find favor in our Shabbat rest. Instill in us the holiness of your mitzvot, and let your Torah be our portion. Fill our lives with your goodness and gladden us with your triumph. Cleanse our hearts so that we might faithfully, lovingly and willingly, Adonai, our God, grant that we inherit your holy Shabbat, so that the people Israel who hallow your name will always find rest on this day. Praised are you, Adonai, who hallows Shabbat.
Yikadal yikadash shemeh rabba.
Amen.
Ve'almad yivrak yirteh v'yamich machuteh. V'chayechonu v'yomechonu v'chayedecho beit Yisrael. Agalav izman kariv v'yimeru.
Amen. Yeheshme Rabba Mevara. Le'olam olam me'omayam. Yiparach.
Yiparach v'yishabach. Yipar v'yitramam v'yinaseh. Yitadar v'yitalev v'yitala shemed kudesha.
Rihu.
Le'ela minku brechata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran ve'alma v'yimeru.
Amen.
Tikabat zoloton uvaoton. Decho Yisrael kadamu v'hun divishmaya v'yimeru.
Amen.
Yehesh lama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru.
Amen.
Ose shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru.
Amen. We rise for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, latet gedula. Page 51. Shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama. Shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam. Ve'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu noteh shamayim v'yosed haaretz Moshe v'yikaro b'shamayim imaha u'shchinatu zo Begave meromim Eloheinu eno Emet malkeinu efesulato Kakatu v'torato V'yadata hayom v'hashevota elevavecha Ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim Bashamayim mima v'ya'aretz mitachat eno. V'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz. Vayom hahu Yihye Adonai echad. Ushema echad. We may be seated except for those who are reciting the Mourner's Kaddish. You're with me on page 52. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah v'yalma divra kirute v'yamlich malchute v'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayedecho beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lamei amaya yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'yitadar, v'yitala, v'yitalal, shmei dukudesha, brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru, amen. Ehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. May their blessings continue to bring, may their memories continue to bring blessings to this world. As I know they do. I just want to mention a few things. Actually, I'll put this away. I'm sorry if it bothers me so much. We're still going back and forth. Every new freedom also brings new challenges, which I guess is the theme of the Seder. With that, before we do Yigdal on page 53, I'm going to make sure I cover the important announcements. Tomorrow, after services, I'll be teaching, I think the last in this series I've been doing on Jewish law. It'll be on Zoom and as well as in person following the service. So around 12:30 or just about 15 minutes after the service for those who want to come in here or want to join me. And I'm still divided over my topic. I was talking to Meg about it earlier. I'm either going to do we have to write out G-D when we write God's name? And if no, why not? And if yes, why? And or I may end up doing Kitniyot. So because I was kind of excited about lecture I heard recently by a halachicist about kitniyot. So about rice, beans, and legumes, etc. So, but that's tomorrow following the service. On Sunday, the Green Team and the Social Action Committee are both meeting and then into next week. So next week, we have Mia Rubenstein's bat mitzvah on Saturday next week. And then the day after that, and no, I have not announced this yet, although you'll find it on the website, I have a children's event going on the next morning. So 11 a.m. Sunday, April 10th will be Rav Nadav's Passover Seder experience, which I did at the JCC 3 years ago, and I'll be doing here on that day. And that's for children ages out of the womb up until around 4th grade, and they will live the Seder, which means, as you probably remember, I enslaved them. And I don't enslave them. Whoever's playing Pharaoh enslaves them. I'm Moses. I'm there to help them. But we enslave them and make them do things, and eventually they confront the Egyptians with the 10 plagues and dwell in tents, and then have a little Seder and have to make it to freedom through the Red Sea. So that will take about 45 minutes total. And so if you know any children in the area who would like to join us for that, please let them know. And in addition, the Passover Project 2022, so important this year, especially because of COVID, the last two, and also in memory of Carol Feinerman, who was so instrumental in starting and always administering the project. It's the long tradition we have to make sure people, not only people who don't have a place to go on Pesach, but also people who could use a guest at their Seder, which is what the Seder is about. It's about opening up that system and bringing in people you might not have expected. So if you can fit 1 or 2 or 3 more at your Seder, let us know, because there are people who may want to be with a different person. And there could be people who say, look, I could do the Seder at home with the two of us or the three of us. But after 2 years of coronavirus, I wouldn't mind going to someone else's Seder and joining with them. So if you have spots at your Seder, or if you're looking to just have the experience of being at a different Seder and you're willing to be placed, then please let us know the arrangements. And if you have any questions, you can contact either Meg Bernstein or Patty Resserbillion. And so those are the main announcements for today. With that, we're at Yigdal on page 53. After Yigdal, we'll turn off the Zoom and the stream, but I may have an additional question for you. Page 53. Yigdal Elohim Chai v'yishtabach nimsa ve'en et el metziuto echad ve'en yachid keyichudo nelam v'gam en sof li'achduto en lo demut haguf ve'eno guf lo naroch elam kedushato kadmon lechol davar asher nivra Rishon ve'en reshit l'reshito. Hino Adon Olam v'chol notzar yoreh gedulato malchuto. Shefa nevuato netahano el anshe segulato v'tif Barto, lo kambe Yisrael kemo she'od, naviu ma'abit et temunato, Torat emet natan li'amo el, ayad nevio neman beito, lo yachalif ha'el, v'lo ya'im nirdato, le'olamim lezulato, sofe ve'yodea zetaharenu, ma'bit le'sof davar mekad Mato Gomel ish chesed kemifalo noten lerashara kerishato Yishlach v'ketz hayamin mishichenu lifdot mechake ketz yeshuato Meitim yechayael berov chasto Baruch adei ad shem tihilato Meitim yechayael kerov chasto. Let's finish strong. Baruch adei ad shem tehilato. Shabbat shalom and Chodesh Tov. And you're thinking, like, because the memories from lessons in this world, sometimes because we share it with memories. So